Hello, welcome or welcome back to Sapling Tarot. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a subject near and dear to my heart, which is, the working title for this video is Tarot and Autism. How, certainly in my life, tarot and autism go hand in hand. It is April as I'm recording this, which is World Autism Acceptance, Awareness, Appreciation Month. So I thought I would make a little video about it. I feel like I mention it in every video and it winds me up no end. I'm an autistic person living an autistic life, and I know that there are many of us in the tarot community. So I thought I would, take this opportunity to talk to you about why, to my mind, tarot and autism go hand in hand. While I'm doing that, I'm going to be painting some little bags for some tarot decks that need homes. So please excuse me while I just rearrange the chaos that is my desk. And let's get into it. So the first bag I'm going to paint is going to be for my deck of the month, which is the Herb Crafters Tarot. So that's what I'm going to be doing while I chat to you. So I'm going to start off with a very, very rudimentary explanation of what even is autism. Very, very briefly, autism is, autism comes under the umbrella of neurodivergence. Neurodivergence, or that umbrella, covers all sorts of different conditions. It's not just a euphemism for autism or ADHD. It's all sorts of different things that just mean that your brain operates in a way that is considered atypical, or like what's considered generally normal in the society you live in. Just like a quick thing, the word is neurodivergence rather than one person being neurodiverse. One person can't be diverse. I am neurodivergent, a group of people that includes me, but also other neurotypes, would be a neurodiverse group. So I am neurodivergent, humanity is neurodiverse. I hope that makes sense. Generally speaking, autistic people tend to prefer what's referred to as identity first language rather than person first language, although I know that received wisdom for a lot of neurotypical people is to use person first language. So what I mean by that is it's okay to call someone autistic. You don't have to say person with autism. Many of us are very literal, and so the idea of being someone with autism doesn't sit right. But as with all language, if you're not sure, it's always best to ask people how they prefer to be referred to. So, autism spectrum disorder or condition, depending on where you are or what textbook you're working from, is a neurological and developmental condition. It affects how people interact with others, how we communicate, how we learn, how we behave. It's like a pretty global, that is to say, it impacts like most parts of life. It's thought to affect around 1% of the population, but that's a very conservative estimate. As we learn more and more about autism and neurodivergence on the whole, the numbers are steadily increasing, which is a good segue onto the point that increase in diagnosis is due to increased understanding of the condition rather than any kind of epidemic or any other kind of scary words you might have heard of. It's also not because it's become trendy. or anything like that. It's because people are understanding autism more. It used to just be a diagnosis kind of reserved for young, white, cisgender boys, maybe some men, but it was a very limited understanding of the condition, which can affect anybody. It's something that you're born with. It's not something that you can catch or acquire it later in life, although sometimes it maybe doesn't appear immediately. Some people, if they're kind of like generally coping with life when they're younger, it's not as apparent, and then sometimes it can just like, hit people like a bus in adulthood. But yeah, you can't catch it, and you also can't cure it. It is a difference in brain wiring. It's not something that you can cure, and arguably nor should you want to. Which isn't to say that some autistic people don't struggle immensely with it and maybe wish that things were different, but we're certainly not out here seeking a way of curing or getting rid of autism. Formal medical diagnosis, despite what you may have heard, is still very hard to get. Oftentimes, in many places, it's very expensive, or there's extraordinarily long waiting lists. Self-diagnosis is perfectly valid if it is something that resonates with you and you feel more kind of seen and understood in the autistic community, then that is totally valid, and anyone that says otherwise is a little bit of a bell end, in my opinion. Some people also may reasonably avoid getting a formal medical diagnosis because that can increase your risk of being impacted by the stigma and discrimination attached to being autistic. For instance, at the beginning of the COVID times, people with diagnoses like autism were subject to do not resuscitate orders against their will, and there are many countries that you can't get a visa to move to if you have a diagnosis like autism, because we are deemed as a potential burden on the state. So there's loads of reasons that you might want to avoid getting a formal or medical diagnosis. And if I'm honest, there aren't really many benefits to having one. I think you can get some additional kind of legal protections in some places, but that can still be pretty tricky. So yeah, I reiterate, self-diagnosis is perfectly valid. It's my belief that if the label of autism, of being autistic, helps someone feel less alone, feel less broken, helps them find community and coping strategies, then I'm certainly not going to stand in their way. So autism is a spectrum condition, which means that generally no autistic people will present the same, even within a family. It's a spectrum in the sense that all autistic people are on it, and it shows up differently. It's not a spectrum that like everyone is on. It's a spectrum that all autistic people are on. It's not a linear spectrum where you've got like one end is like mild autism and the other end is like 5 chili peppers extra spicy autism. It looks more like this. This is a very simplified overview, and it doesn't include some of the things that I actually struggle with the most, for instance executive function, but also it doesn't include classic things like empathy or stimming or eye contact. It also kind of uses deficit framing rather than strength framing, but regardless, it illustrates the idea of what is called a spiky cognitive profile. So to illustrate the spiky cognitive profile, this is kind of what mine looks like. It has peaks and valleys. So there are some things that I really struggle with, some things that I don't struggle with so much that the next autistic person may find really challenging. You've probably, or you may have heard it said before, that once you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, and many of us have drastically different experiences. And so the final thing that I just want to mention on like the whole what is autism section is, generally speaking, we don't use functioning labels anymore, which kind of goes hand in hand with we don't use Asperger's as a label anymore. There are some people who still identify with that because that's what their diagnosis was when that was still a diagnostic term. It was the diagnosis that I was given, but we generally don't talk about that anymore because the person, Mr. Asperger, was, shall we say, a problematic individual. And similarly, we don't tend to use the functioning labels anymore. So you might have heard people refer to others as high functioning or low functioning autistic people. This massively oversimplifies the complexities and range of experiences that different autistic people experience, and reduces us to one-dimensional creatures that are either productive under capitalism or are burdens. A similar level of nuance needs to be given to other labels such as support needs labels, or levels of autism. I'll admit that the levels of autism concept does really tickle me as someone who quite likes gaming, and so the idea of being like a high level autism makes me laugh, but still measuring people by perceived high or low levels of autism or support needs and stuff is just really reductive, and most people's needs fluctuate, and also everyone has needs, and we don't generally go classifying people by that in the rest of the world, so it's not ideal to do it to autistic folk either. General consensus in the autistic community is it is better to look at what each individual needs, rather than trying to group us into neat little hierarchies. I know that it is very human to want to put people in boxes, and ironically that's what a lot of people will label newly diagnosed autistic people as doing, if like kind of identity hunting or identity collecting. But yeah, generally speaking, it's better to just go on a case-by-case basis, as in my opinion is better with most people. Making generalisations, here we go, I'm making a generalisation. Making generalisations generally isn't the way forward. So now I've said all of that, and I feel like we're maybe on the same page in terms of what is autism, etc. I want to talk about why I think that tarot and autism are natural bedfellows. I'm speaking entirely from my own personal experience. I'm sure there are many autistic people out there who have no interest in tarot. There are probably some who are like actively against tarot because it's a bit woo. But I have my things that I want to say about why I think that tarot is brilliant, and why I think a lot of neurodivergent and autistic people gravitate towards tarot. So first of all, you may well have heard about autistic special interests, which are like intense, focused areas of passion and fascination. This can be like where people are like really skilled at something, but it can also be to the detriment of other obligations, or your own survival, so like forgetting to sleep and eat because of it. So this isn't autism is a superpower thing. This is just a part of many people's autistic reality, and tarot has been one of my special interests for a really long time. This kind of hyper focus, I suppose, that I can get with tarot makes it, and the whole world of tarot, just incredibly immersive, and something that I have been able to escape to many times in my life, and I feel really lucky that I've been able to enjoy and appreciate. Oh god, this paint won't open. Oh no, I've just burst the paint. That's not ideal, but I guess it's open now. So that's my train of thought absolutely buggered. Yeah, so anyway, I'm really, it feels like a lucky thing for me. Special interest can absolutely be a double-edged thing, but the world of tarot can be incredibly immersive. It's also basically a deck of impossibly rich and detailed flashcards that detail like the whole, well, maybe not the whole of the human experience, but like lots of the human experience. And it's like given me a way to relate to the world that goes with like my pattern recognition skills. So when I'm moving through the world, I'm able to see things that I recognise from tarot, and that is very pleasing, and it can be very grounding, and yeah, it means that I can kind of relate it to all parts of day-to-day life and make everything somewhat tangentially related to my special interest, which is really lovely. So I can find like consistent themes and symbols, and yeah, I can associate most things with most things. I'm a terrible person to play word association with because my brain will ping pong all over the place and can link seemingly completely disparate things together. As well as that, like tarot has a really comforting and comfortable structure. So it forms a baseline that you can layer any number of other interests or bits of knowledge into, which is really cool. So like other special interests of mine are things like herbalism and astrology and art and history and mythology, and all sorts of things. And then so like with every card in every deck, you can find a new perspective and develop new thoughts. I've talked about it before on this channel, but one of the reasons I love tarot so much is that like you're just never going to run out of stuff to learn, of new perspectives to gain, and that makes it like the perfect special interest because you're never going to run out of stuff. Okay, so that's the first coat of the herb crafters. That's the greens for the herb crafters. Yeah, another special interest of mine, weirdly, maybe to some people, for a long time has been like psychology and personal development, I guess. So tarot has helped me in a bunch of different ways with this, because obviously you can use tarot for self-development and reflection and shadow work and all that kind of stuff, but it's also helped me be less obsessive about it, and to kind of hold it more lightly, which I mean can only be a good thing, really. So it's just kind of become one star, I guess, in like the grand constellation of my interests and passions, rather than being so like all-consuming. Tarot's helped me tap into my intuition, which many autistic people are often thought to not have, which yeah, I could make a whole video on like weird stigmas about autistic people, but I won't do that today. But yeah, lots of people think that like we don't have intuition, we don't have empathy, we don't have any of these sorts of things, which is super weird. I mean, some people don't, but I'm sure some neurotypical people don't either. So yeah, but it has also helped me tap into my intuition and learn to like trust myself. This is like less of an autistic thing, I think, and maybe more of a like little traumatized bean thing. But like the autistic element to it is that many of us struggle with what's called interoception, which is where you don't, or it's where it's kind of hard to understand what your body's telling you. And I think like lots of people, particularly in modern life, struggle with this. Like we're kind of taught by society to ignore our body cues, but autistic people potentially like struggle with it more than more than most. So that can be like knowing if you're hungry or thirsty or tired and those sorts of things, but it can also be like not knowing your feelings and emotions. And then some people like also further experience what's called alexithymia, which is where you can't identify and you also can't express your feelings. So that's where the where some of the stereotype of the like stony, roboty, autistic person comes in. It's not that like we don't have feelings, it's that maybe it's just a bit harder to express them in a way that is considered normal, I guess. And so tarot has been part of what's helped me learn to kind of like follow my gut instinct and follow my intuition. And that's something that I really like to do in tarot readings with other people, is like ask them like the first things that come into their mind and like the things that they relate to best and what kind of comes up for them. And I think that it's a really magical tool in that regard. Yeah, it's also helped me like work through trauma and stuff where like, yeah, you know, all that kind of good stuff about learning to trust yourself and learning to not self-censor so much. Because I used to just like not really listen to my inner voice, which is probably how I got into such tricky situations. But yeah, I was kind of taught not to listen to it, and tarot has helped me unlearn that. And then the final thing that I have in my notes is like a much more like tangible thing, which is that for many neurodivergent people, but like I think particularly autistic and ADHD people, a way that we can self-regulate, so kind of soothe and smooth ourselves to manage difficult situations, or like to help us think. Something that can be really useful for this kind of self-regulatory behaviour, which we call stimming, is like shuffling a tarot deck. And I know there's loads of people here on YouTube that have talked about this and about it just being a really soothing activity. And it can be a really soothing activity for you even if you're not neurodivergent. And you know, neurotypical people stim as well in kind of, you know, soothing behaviours. It's just usually more prevalent in neurodivergent people. And it can be like actively harmful if we're not able to do it. And I mean, that's kind of where a lot of the kind of the spectrum thing comes in, or the misunderstood idea of the spectrum of like we're all on it, or everyone does that, or everyone feels that way, or everyone experiences that kind of thing. Often it's, but like to what extent do you experience it? Is it just something that's like a little bit annoying, or is it going to absolutely ruin your day, week, month, life? And stimming can be a really useful, because it's always difficult to try and find stims that are like socially acceptable, I guess, and shuffling a deck of cards, in my experiences, is a pretty socially acceptable thing to do in most situations. I mean, maybe not at a funeral, I guess. People might think that that's a bit tricky, but yeah, that can be a really useful thing for a lot of people, to help de-stress, or to think, or function, or any of those sorts of things. The rhythm matched with the like tactile sensation of nice cardstock or whatever that is for you, can just be really beneficial, unless you're a terrible shuffler like I am. So I don't find it quite as soothing as some of my other neurodivergent tarot peers, but you know, I'm getting there, kind of, maybe. Definitely threw cards all over the place earlier today. So yeah, so that's my little spiel about tarot and autism. I hope it was kind of interesting, and like it might have pieced together some of the reasons why there's so many of us here on TarotTube. So yeah, I hope this has helped, you know, you be more aware or more accepting or more appreciative of us autistics. Yeah, I hope it was interesting or entertaining or somewhat. This is all I've managed to get done is do one layer of green on the Herb Crafters bag, and then this is a bag for my Atella tarot. Atella? It's even written on the back. Atella. That needs a... Oh, I've just got green paint everywhere. Oh no. Anyway, okay, I'm going to stop filming before I just... this all goes totally off track. I hope you're taking really good care of yourself. Thank you for watching. Oh, I'm losing my mind. Okay. I hope you're taking really good care of yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.